Hello, welcome to the CarCast+Edmunds podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndre, here with Alistair Weaver. We missed you last week.
Did you? I'm always worried that when you bring in a substitute, they do a better job. And I think Steve was fantastic. So I was like, is anybody really missing me out there? Or, should I just give it all up?
Steve did a great job. He just doesn't have the charming accent.
That's right. I can hold on to the accent
Yeah, you could.
in my
Uh,
advancing years.
but listen, we did a great show. I was glad to have him on. We talked about his sort of a cross country road trip in his Toyota Tacoma. I guess you guys had a loaner car here in LA, and he drove it back to Detroit to bring it back. So it was sort of a one-way driving trip for
It was
him.
the end of our long-term, our year-long
Yeah.
test of that vehicle. So he did like one last hurrah, was driving it cross country. He haven't wished me happy birthday. I'm noting so far.
Yeah, it's your birthday. Happy
My
birthday.
birthday. Thank you very much.
I
I
didn't know if you
remain
wanted people to know today was your
I
birthday.
remain younger than you. I'm going to
Yes,
milk it for all it's worth. The only problem is like a birthday today. I don't know when you're listening to this, but it's Friday. Like I get my birthday today, Sunday, Mother's Day. So like I have one day that's all about me. I
that's
don't even
it.
get a
Yeah.
weekend.
Uh,
Anyway,
yeah, happy
talk
birthday.
cars. Thank you very much.
Refreshed after a little vacation, a little
Yeah. Yeah, I
few
went to
days
I went
off.
to Maui, Hawaii, which was very beautiful. I had 4 nights away, and anybody who has young children will empathize with this. I had 4 nights without the children. I love my children dearly, but 4 nights not being woken up or anything like that was marvelous. I went
Yeah.
to the adults only pool. Don't read
Okay.
that the wrong way. It was just a pool without children, and it was a marvelous time.
Yeah, you can hang out, you can day drink.
I did day drink. In fact, I had a glorious moment on Sunday when it was the Miami Grand Prix, and I was sat by the pool in Hawaii with a beer in my hand at like 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, watching the Miami Grand Prix with nobody interrupting me, nobody saying I had to watch it in fast forward because I had to take the kids to dance class. It was marvelous.
All right, sounds like a good trip. Before we get into all the good fun stuff here, let me tell you about Bet Online. It's the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into NBA and NHL playoffs. And Bet Online has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. And with the largest selection of odds on everything from MLB, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the best source for all your sports wagering info. In between the games, you can always head on over to the BetOnline casino for all the top Vegas style games, including poker and their live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. Some other things we got into with Steve last week, other than the Tacoma, the the cross country trip in Tacoma, which is interesting, right? Because then you can get into, is it comfortable? Is it better? Is the seats more comfortable? And he took the TRD. I think you guys had a TRD Pro, and I was saying before, it's like kind of like a Raptor. The off-road suspension is nicer even on the street than the normal suspension, oftentimes that we're finding in these trucks
Yeah,
because
ours
it's
isn't a
it's just meant
TRD Pro. Ours is a TRD. It's not the Pro, but
not the
it's
Pro.
it's not the Pro, but I know what you mean. Because
Yeah,
sometimes, because you get more, I found that a lot, even with like Raptors and stuff, is you get a bit more compliance in the suspension.
yeah.
And everybody thinks, so you just get that little, like a little bit more of a kind of floating motion, which sometimes, depending on the terrain, can be nice.
But we asked about were the tires too loud, and he said it was fine. It was tolerable. Like it was a little bit more road noise than the normal all season tires and the highway tires, but it was good. We got into a 540i BMW and BMW M4 CS, which he's a fan of, and why wouldn't you be?
Yeah.
But speaking of BMWs though, M5, you got some time behind the wheel of the M5
Yeah,
recently.
I finally drove it this week. We had the sedan in the office. We got the touring coming in, the wagon coming in a couple of weeks, which I obviously think is the cooler thing. Like, there's been so much said about this thing. It's £5,500. It feels it. I mean, the 5 Series has grown so much over the last, 20, 30 years that it's a big car now. And you do drive it and you think, even if you didn't know how heavy it was, you do think this is like a big chunk of a car.
Yeah.
And it's for me, it's a bit of a sledgehammer. I mean, it's brutally quick. It's very comfortable, and I think if it was your everyday car, you'd feel like king of the road. It's super fast when you want it to be. It's super comfortable. You know, great music if you want it. Obviously it does the EV stuff. But I also just felt like I've driven every M5 since I started. I remember starting my career in the driving one back from Germany to the UK, and at the end of '98. I remember Chris Harris, who's gone on to like obviously make a name for himself. I remember he and I like
Yeah.
flipping a coin as to this is how like enthusiastic we were in those days. We flipped a coin as who would go to Germany and drive one back on Christmas Eve or something. And I won, and I got to fly to Stuttgart, pick one up from Automotor Sport, which is the German publication, drive one back to the UK. And this was in the days when you could drive through France at insane speed and they didn't bother the Brits. If you're on British plates or German plates, nobody bothered you. It's changed very much now. So like we always used to have these like record runs from Stuttgart back to the UK. So it covered an enormous ground. I just remember that V8 manual just being a
Oh yeah.
fabulous car, wonderful car. I'd love one today actually. And this is very different. It just lacks a bit of that kind of, you just don't have that sense of like driving it, that finesse. It's way more capable. It's way faster. It's got way more grip, all that good stuff. But so much of that interactivity just feels like it's lost. I mean, the powertrain plug-in hybrid, super complicated. Like you get in and it's like, okay, so what am I trying to do here? And you have like the M buttons on the steering wheel so you can pre-configure stuff. But then it's like, I mean, in all of these cars, my default for the road is aggressive on engine, aggressive on transmission, soft on suspension. And
Yeah.
that seems to be the default for Southern California. But you kind of got to set all this up. Then you got to think about your battery relative to your engine and how you're managing all that. And it'd be a great thing if you live with one of these things day in day out. It would you'd love it. You throw everything in, family's comfortable. It'll be whatever car you want it to be. But it just lacks, for me, it just lacks a little bit of that finesse that you used to get 20, 30 years ago when they were lighter, the manual, the steering was more, a little bit more feelsome, shall we say.
It
So
takes a little bit of this sports carness out of it. Even though it's a sedan, it always still kind of felt like a fun sports car, like you said. And of course, the manual transmission really helped that.
and the M3 and the M4 are still small enough and light enough to keep that feeling a bit. And the M5 is so big and so heavy now that it just feels a bit more of a blunt instrument, a bit more of a sledgehammer when, what you really want is a scalpel. So, this was always like the 911 for people who couldn't have a 911 for people like me. But yeah, I'll be interested to drive the touring because I think it makes more sense as a touring now as like the ultimate kind of GT rather than a sedan posing as a sports car, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I was thinking about this too. It's like, all right, it's a big, heavy car. Maybe even not that big, but it's definitely a heavy car. So last week, Steve was saying that he drove it as well, and he felt like it felt big to him.
yeah, it
Um,
felt big to me as well. Like feels
yeah.
weighty. It feels like there's a lot of inertia going on.
Yeah, and just he sort of like got the sense of like driving it like it was physically big. Like, did it fit in the lane correctly? It was like, was it driving like a lowered Raptor? Like that kind of thing. Like it just felt big, almost like Aventador big or something. And I don't know if that's just the weight happening or not, but and then again on the other thought was like, okay, if it feels big and it's already heavy, do you just get the wagon then?
I think you totally get the wagon. I think if you're going M5, you get the wagon because it's cooler, it's more practical. It basically turns it into an, de facto SUV, and then it just becomes it just becomes a tool. And like they're 130 grand, which is an awful lot of money, but actually, relative to a lot of things, that's kind of where that market is now. The other thing I'd say about like what is an M5 now, because the i5, the electric car, is so fast in a straight line, so comfortable, so capable that if all you want to do is go fast in a straight line and you can live with an EV, you might as well get an i5 and save yourself a ton of money. So the M5 needs to deliver more, and I think that's where it starts to become challenging for me. I also kind of look at it and think, well, is this what the M team would have started with? If you'd had a clean sheet of paper and said, forget about legislation, forget about emission, forget about this, would you build a plug-in hybrid M5? And I think the answer almost certainly would be no. And I think the way Porsche's gone with the 911 GTS, where you've got a hybrid, like a hybrid, not a plug-in, but a hybrid 911, where you've got, and they'll do the same with the turbos, where you're using the electric motor to support the gas engine. That's the way forward for me for performance. Instantaneous torque, support the gas power. And this is different. This is a complicated plug-in hybrid, and it's it kind of led by the legislation rather than being led by performance desire. So
Yeah.
it's and actually the Corvette E-Ray is the same. That's not a plug-in hybrid. That's really using the electrification as a performance tool and to drive the front wheels. And the M5 is a bit different in the way that the C63, the Mercedes, is different. A lot of it's just been driven by European emissions regulations and all the rest of it. So I mean, it'd be, as I say, it'd be a really nice thing to live with. If that was your only car, it would do pretty much everything that you wanted. But I mean, it's crazy. I drove the RS6. I remember driving the original RS6, which had that V10 Lamborghini derived engine.
Yeah.
And I remember driving it in Germany. Audi did this big event in Germany on the Autobahn. We were all like flat 170 miles an hour on the Autobahn and stuff. But everybody's, oh, it's so big. It it's got a bit of push in it. It's all like, feels big and heavy. And now you look back at those things and think, actually, that thing was like lithe and agile by today's standards.
Yeah.
It's quite depressing, like where all this is ending up.
Is is the is the performance that the BMW adds through its hybrid powertrain worth it? Or if you're shopping for the super wagon, do you still really maybe kind of lean toward RS6 wagon? Or even there's a E63 wagon coming back, an AMG wagon?
E53, I think it's a slightly, yeah, it's going to be a bit cheaper the Mercedes one, but that looks quite interesting. The RS6 is going to be. We're actually you might be seeing coming soon. We might be doing something of that ilk. And not
Yeah.
giving the game away too much, but yeah, I mean it's going to be an interesting. I don't, the Audi's probably not going to be as fast, but fast enough. And as I say, now it's seen as light and agile, and yeah, it's turbo. It's still a V8 turbo. It's not naturally aspirated, but it's not got all that complexity. And the BMW doesn't go that far on electric only. I think it's 30 miles or something realistically.
And
So
and maybe this is a silly question, but I'm just trying to keep up with all the plug-in hybrid technology. It won't charge off the engine, and it's not like the Volvo can do that
yeah,
sometimes,
no,
right? Like,
they all can generally do that. So I think you can keep the battery going with the engine. So you use the engine as a generated charge battery. Because bear in mind, you only get full performance if the battery's got proper charge. And
yeah,
this is, I think, sometimes where everybody like twists themselves up in knots about it, because you need the battery charged. So then you end up using the engine to keep the battery going. Otherwise, you've only got, and if you're using if you're driving it aggressively, you're only going to have like 10, 20 miles where you've got all 700 and whatever it is horsepower. And that's the other thing. Even I was in Hawaii and I rented a Jeep, and it had the 4xe powertrain with the plug-in hybrid. And I picked it up from Enterprise, and they had all these electric chargers, but they hadn't plugged it in, because somebody at Enterprise said, well, hang on a minute, we're going to pay for the charge. So
yeah.
why don't we just fill it? Why the customer brings it back with gas? So why are we filling it up? So I started with zero battery, and then I had to use the engine to charge the electric battery so I could have the performance. So yeah, that's the other thing. I hate all of that. I'm no fan really of plug-in hybrids most of the time. I hate all that kind of mental calculation of, do I need to use the engine to charge the battery,
Right.
or what mode am I in, and how am I going to run this? And I just want to get in and go. And it just feels like a kind of tweener technology to me. I'd rather have either a hybrid or an EV. It's the plug-in
I
bit that
I
I'm not a
I,
fan of.
I agree, or just the gas engine. But like, I'm a little less BMW M5 plug-in hybrid and a little more like NSX, right? Like, you just
Yeah,
get in
or
it, you drive it.
911 GTS,
Yeah,
or
GTS now,
yeah,
which I
or
haven't driven.
Corvette E-Ray. It just feels like a better use of the technology, and a more kind of pleasurable experience, really.
Right. Okay. Um, how was the Jeep overall out there?
Oh, the
It's,
Jeep. I'm such a geek that I go to hire car companies and start road testing my hire car. Um, I said to my wife, I was like, they're just fun, aren't they? Like they're not. They're a bit crude, and the steering. You're constantly having to play with the steering because it's the way it's set up. But you take the roof off it, you're bumbling along in Hawaii. You don't have to worry about bouncing over curbs, or going up little dirt tracks and stuff. And I said, maybe we should get one. And because a lot of people around where I live, friends have got them because they're just fun.
Yeah.
they're not great objectively, but they just kind of put a smile on your face. And I came back home and was looking up how much the 392, the V8 version is, and like if you gotta use one of those, but they're still a chunk of change.
Yeah. I don't know that they made a ton of those. I don't know exactly how many they made, but I've driven the 392. It sounds sick. It's got good power. It probably is way more power than it needs. But you're right. Like over the last few years, certainly a lot of the conversation has been around Bronco. You know, going kind of the same thing like you did in Maui, going, oh, we could take the top off, we can get it on the pavement, get it on the dirt, doesn't matter. We can have a little fun with it, and then drive it around town. So I don't know, like now that you kind of got back into a Jeep and had a little fun with it, are you back in the Jeep camp or are you still Bronco camp?
No, I mean, objectively, the Bronco or maybe even the Forerunner is a better because now we have the new Forerunner as well. I think objectively,
But you can't take the top off.
no. So I think like in order, like the Bronco is probably the best compromise if you want that kind of like, take the top off, don't care, beat it up kind of thing. Is the best It's better to drive than the Jeep. Probably not quite as good to drive as the Forerunner. The Forerunner's like a bit more sensible. Then you've got, the other end of the spectrum. The Jeep's probably a bit more crude, but has that kind of character. It still has that character. You still like bumble along in it, feeling like you're in,
Yeah.
Dukes of Hazzard or something.
Yeah.
I'll still, for me at least, it has that kind of like. It still has more Americana than either, certainly the Forerunner, but also the Bronco.
Yeah.
It's still kind of cool. It's bright red Jeep. You're like cruising Hawaii, so it was good,
Yeah, I
living
want
the
to think,
dream.
that I think about it, I think the last one that I drove, and it's been a while, maybe it was the 392 when it came out. I think that one was red too. I think the Jeep press car was red. It was bright red.
It's really
Yeah.
silly. I just wish it wasn't 100 grand. I'm not sure why it's 100 grand. It feels like there's quite a lot of margin in that V8. I'm not sure why. There's not. It's just an engine. There's not like that much else done to it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think you have to kind of go back and go like, oh, did they have to do all the crash testing again? Was
yeah,
that was some expense there? What did they
I'm
have to
sure somebody
do
would give me a very good reason why it's.
to shoehorn it? But also, car companies like to make money.
Yeah, and generally speaking, they're not very good at that at the moment. So
Yes, it's I was I was sitting and I was watching TV and there was a commercial on that said Ford employee pricing, come in now, you pay what we pay. And then as I was watching the commercial, I was looking at my phone, reading an article going, Ford's going to redo all of their financial calculations. They're expecting like a $1.5 billion loss. I'm like, well, maybe employee pricing isn't what we need to do today. Like, I know
yes,
they're trying to generate some sales, but
it's like how many? Yeah, it's that. Yeah, employee pricing is if you want to make sure you got the employees, but it's. I remember like when I used to run my own company, I remember doing one of these, when you get vetted by a big company, like, should we employ you? I remember this conversation with somebody from procurement, and she was telling me that my rates were too high. And I was like, okay, well, we feel like we're good value for what we are, the usual spiel. So she
yeah,
did this, and then she said, yes, but I'm also putting you down as a medium risk company because I don't feel like you're making enough money. And it was like literally the same sentence. So I feel it's a bit like that with car companies. Like everybody's always beating them up. Everybody's trying to like get the best deal and, smashing up the dealers. And it's all about like, this haggle and blah, blah, blah. And then like you look at, it's a hard business to make money. It really is. The returns are really not good. Unless you're Ferrari, then the returns are really not good.
yes, unless you're Ferrari. It's funny as the tariff thing, and not to spend too much time on that. I think we can probably uh, maybe have Jessica come back in at some point and give us a little more like where are we as the dust starts to settle a little
Yeah.
bit
Well,
more in tariffs.
if you're built in the UK, you've had a better week at least.
Yeah. So, but
So yeah,
Porsche came out and they're like, well, on average, we make 10%, a little more across the lineup of all of our cars. And we know the 911 is so profitable, especially when you double the price with options.
yeah, that's where the real
And they
margin is.
said, and uh, so they said, we're not going to start making 911s in America. and build a factory, they said it makes more sense for us to just pay the tariff and our profit margins will be 5 or 6% instead of 10%. So that's it. And
It would.
Porsche though is over time that's going to trickle down to the MSRP and start, it'll start going up a little bit, which and everyone with Porsche will probably be fine with that. I mean,
I think it'll be fine. Like when you get to 911,
yeah.
I think it's more of an issue with things like the Macan, which are are more, I wouldn't say mainstream, but they're more affordable in a Porsche sense. So yeah, it'll all. But I mean, the interesting thing this week with the UK stuff, now if you're Jaguar Land Rover, which had paused imports to the US, that looks like that's a decent deal for them. But so you basically
Well, they started back now
they started back. So basically, if you look
because
at UK manufacturing, Jaguar Land Rover, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, Mini, all of which are exporting to Morgan, obviously, all of which are exporting to the US, but they're capped at like 100,000, and it's like there's not a lot of room for growth there. So if you're now Jaguar Land Rover, you're probably looking at it going, we don't really want to sell many Evoques. We want to sell Big Daddy Range Rover because that's where the margin is. So I think you might see some shift in the market because if they know that once they hit 100,000 units, collectively the whole of the UK market is suddenly going to be paying the 25% tariff, then you're going to need to keep it down, keep your volumes down, which means you want to sell your high margin vehicles.
yeah.
So there's a lot still to come on this. We'll get Jessica back. She'll know far more about it than
And
me.
she'll know how to explain it, I guess, a little bit better
It was a bit like the
than I
same in the
could.
pandemic. I remember looking at buying a base model Defender in the pandemic, and the dealer saying to me, I don't want to sell you this. I'm not going to sell you it." I said, "What do you mean you're not going to sell me it?" It's like, "I'm not going to sell you with that 10 grand markup on a non V8 or 20 grand markup on a V8." And he said, I don't want to sell you a Defender S. And I was like, "Well, I want an S with like steely wheels, and I want this, and I want that." And it was basically like, "No, we've got supply problems. We're only going to sell high margin vehicles. Thank
Yeah.
you."
Okay. Not sure that's the best business model for
But
a,
that might be where we're going with some of this stuff. Like,
yeah.
would you sell your entry level model, or would you try and push everybody into the V8s and stuff because that's where the money is? It's going to be really hard. It's going to be hard decisions for sure.
Right, from a manufacturer standpoint, but if you're a salesman on the sales floor in the showroom there going, "Nah, I'm not gonna sell you this thing."
Yeah, I mean,
I'm like, "Oh, okay."
okay,
Yeah, well, all right. Let's
all
talk
right,
about what you do want to sell or go to
yeah,
another dealer.
or
Um,
yeah, maybe get a Genesis, which is what I did.
yeah. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, Corvette's in the news. Redesign of the Corvette, but the interior. I didn't I didn't hate the interior with the big row of buttons in it, but I wasn't sold on it either. Although I didn't spend a lot of time in Corvettes. I drove the C8 when it came out, and
Yeah,
you know,
we owned one for a couple of years.
yeah, I remember.
I kind of I thought I didn't know his character, but yeah, I mean that whole row, but like ergonomically disastrous. But once you live with it for a while, you sort of know where they are. And
Yeah.
I I didn't mind it. I had more problems with the square steering wheel than I did with the row of buttons, but the square steering wheel remains. But yeah, they've done a nice. It's interesting. So this is for 26 model year that they've just come out and shown. If you watch on YouTube, we can probably show you a picture of it. But
Yeah.
they've done pretty comprehensive interior redesign. So they've got rid of the sort of north-south strip of buttons that Matt was talking about, and now they've gone more to screen. So it looks kind of like Fighter Command now, doesn't it? You've got big screen in front of you, big screen to the right of you, then you've got cup holders and then a grab handle for the passenger. I think that's probably pretty important. I like it. I mean, I haven't seen it in person. I'm seeing it in person in a couple of weeks' time. But
Okay.
I think it looks good, and I think GM's making a real effort to improve. I mean, Silverado, they've done a big job improving the interiors. I think they're trying really hard to just give all of their cars the cabin quality a bit of a jump, and yeah, it seems like a sensible step forward. The only weird thing about it is that they've got like the ZR1 is imminent, and the very first ones will be FY25 with the old interior, and then
Okay.
they're not going to build very many of those, and then you're into FY26 with a whole new interior. So it's kind of strange timing So you've got, certainly with ZR1 being new, so you're going to have the rest of this model yet. It won't be till probably fall that we see the new interior coming on stream. But it looks nice. I mean, and I think the thing about the Corvettes as well is you can really kind of change the feel of the interior depending on how you trim it. So if you want like bright red leather, you can make it
Yeah.
look pretty chintzy. But if you go for like grey or just black or something, then it actually tones it right down. Same with the exterior, actually.
Now that you're
Yeah,
getting
those are
into
bright.
ZR1, you're getting into $200,000 territory, and yes, you want to be able to feel that in the interior. You want to be able to feel like some attention's been put in there. And if you think about it, it's like we were talking, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago about if you're going to cut corners on some cars, why do the plastic steering wheel, right? Like when
Yes.
it's the one thing that you're touching and staring at every single time you're in the car, right? Why not try to cut it someplace else? Like wouldn't you rather have a decent steering wheel and leather covered front seats and then just have like vinyl back seats, which would you probably never even notice? Like at least that would make more sense than just the plastic steering wheel that you see all the time. So I think Corvette investing on the interior makes sense.
Yeah, it's still very driver focused. The passenger still feels like they're kind of an afterthought, but I don't mind that. I mean, BMW used to do that for years. And like there's nice like the one you've got on screen there is like grey, like a grey and black two-tone, and that feels
Yeah.
a lot more kind of considered. I think the vets are really interesting. I was playing around before we came on air with like configuring a ZR1 or something, and you can actually make a ZR1 look a bit like a sleeper if you take off the big rear wing and you don't specify that. And yes, you're going to lose a few points of downforce on the track, but really, I like the idea of kind of a sleeper ZR1 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm driving it. I'm driving it in a couple of. It's coming up.
Okay.
It's gonna. I can't probably won't be able to talk about it for a few weeks because it's under one of those special embargoes. But I am heading down to a major circuit to have a play in it, which is going to
Yeah.
be great
Listen,
fun.
and
Looking
that's
forward to that
that's
one.
where you should be able to go and experience the car so you can understand what its capabilities are before you eventually bring one back here and we get to test one and drive it on the streets and whatnot. But I think, listen, the C8 was already a lot of bang for the buck, and they continue with that theme with Z06 and I think ZR1. Even at $200,000, just looking at the specs on paper, there's not a whole lot of anything out there that's going to be able to really compete with it for that kind of price range.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I look at you're just putting it on paper. Like, what are you really up against? I mean, 911 Turbo is not a lot more, and I think when they do the new one with the high, that we're expecting a hybrid version, that's going to be as real world fast. And of course, that's all wheel drive. But yeah, there's nothing. I mean, to be honest, I was going through this and started to think about I'm going to do the video of the ZR1, and I was thinking about like what's the narrative here, and I was thinking about cars that I've driven with more than 1,000 horsepower, and I've never driven a gas car. I missed the last time we had the Bugatti. I haven't driven a gas car with more than 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
I drove an old Renault F1 car which had more power to weight and was obviously gas. That was an old V10 F1 car, but I have never driven I've never driven a gas car with more than 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying to think about that. The Bugatti Chiron Pure Sport I drove around town in. I think I used 130 of the 1,000 plus
Yeah.
horsepower
So
sitting
you were
in
a classic
traffic.
Bugatti owner, basically.
Yeah, sitting in traffic with one of their test drivers telling me as he's like texting his girlfriend or something. He's like, "Yeah, we're in traffic. Good luck. Have a good day." No, but incredible car. But you're right. Like Porsche 911 Turbo probably can put down some similar performance numbers. It would be a good head to head. But look at the collectability and the resale of some of the Corvettes recently. Modern day ZR1, Z06s, they're pulling money. Honestly, if you ran out tomorrow and bought a new ZR1 and a new 911 Turbo, even a Turbo S, in 3 years from now, I think you get more money for that zero one at Barrett Jackson than you do your
That's a
non-lifter.
really interesting thought, which is never. I mean, the Stingray that doesn't apply to. It's
Yeah.
kind of interesting thought, isn't it? And how many? I guess that's supply as well. How many? How
But
many are they going to make, and how many they're going to? And are there going to be markups on these things? And I was talking about, can you do a sleeper version? I was talking to somebody from Chevy this morning, and the launch color is yellow. So they've obviously decided, no, it's not a sleeper.
no.
It's going to be yellow with a massive rear wing and black, probably black wheels. And yeah, it's really fun. And I think the fact that they've gone mid-engine. I mean, I remember driving the old. In fact, it's still on YouTube. So in Carlos Lago and I did years ago. We had a 911 GT3 and the old ZR1, and I hadn't been in America very long. And it's the first time I'd driven that generation of Corvette, particularly with that power. I just couldn't get on with it. I couldn't feel what the front tires were doing. The steering was giving me no feedback. Frankly, it was a bit terrifying on a circuit because you just had no sense of what the car was doing. Whereas a GT3 you just got into and it was
Yeah.
so communicative and it was what I was used to. But this generation of Corvette is entirely different, and I adore the Z06. And I hope that this is retaining, a lot of that character. The only thing about it is like Clint on our team did a press day in a prototype, and they did 200, I think he did 205 miles an hour in it in the passenger seat. And he said the test driver started in second gear and it was dry. And he said, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "Because it's easier." And
Yeah.
so the thing in my head now is like, traction. It's rear wheel drive,
Right. Actually,
828.
Clint was on the show a few weeks ago, and I think he just got back. He was just telling us about that going, and he didn't even drive. He was in it with the driver, just like showing him how to go that fast
Yeah.
in the car. Because you're right, it's a thing. It takes a little bit of
Because it's not just the 1,064 horsepower, it's also 828 pounds-feet of torque. So, it's not like it's some nutty high revving. It's not like a GT3 engine or something where everything's top
yeah,
end.
yeah,
This has got a lot of pull as well. So,
yeah. Well, that'll be exciting to see. I'm curious to see what you come back with, the sort of stories you come back with that
yeah.
car. Before we wrap up, you want to talk about this Chevy, the Silverado
Oh,
EV?
yes. Sorry. You mean the other Chevy?
The other Chevy. Yeah, the other Chevy.
Yeah, this
Um,
is I was going to say back in the real world, but I'm not even sure this is the
well, the
real world version.
Silverado EV, you guys, we talked about it a while ago, and it 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 didn't come back with like the highest ratings, if you will.
It I mean, I think the challenge with it is it's just, there's certainly the RST, which they launched first, which was the posh version, if you like,
Yeah,
over 100 grand. And you just think this is an awful lot of money. But then this is the work truck. So we do everything through the Edmunds EV range test, took out the Silverado work truck, and this has set a new record. I don't just mean a new record for trucks. This is the longest range vehicle we have ever tested. 539 miles on a single charge. And this is not like we're not doing like, what do you call it, hypermiling.
yeah,
The whole thing is set up to replicate real world driving experience. So we've got a sensible split of town and highway, driving within 5 miles an hour of the speed limit. So it's basically, not like going crazy with the acceleration stuff, but just driving it sensibly and normally to the laws of the land. Yeah, 539 miles. That's a new record for us. 47 miles more than the EPA estimate. And what differentiates this we've now tested three of these sort of GM trucks, and I've lost my page that I wanted to talk about. But if you look at our leaderboard, which is edmunds.com/range, it's now like dominated by these GM trucks. So we have number one is the Silverado work truck. Number two is the GMC Sierra EV Denali, 507 miles. Number four is the posh version of the Silverado at 484, and in between is the Lucid Air Dream, which was the launch edition of the Lucid Air. So, that is an amazing achievement, and they do it. The reason the work truck's going further than the RST is basically different wheels and tires. That's primarily the reason.
yeah,
You just gives you more that the tires and the wheels that are on make a huge difference. The RST's on bigger rims and different tires, and it just has more rolling resistance, eats up more range. Plus, the RST weighs a bit more because it's got more gadgets on it. I drove the work truck home, and I thought it kind of had everything that you need. It's got Apple CarPlay, unlike most GMs these days. It's got air conditioning. And then you're like, and after that, it's like, well, what do I really need? Yes, the seats go backwards and forwards manually. The only thing, to your point earlier, plastic steering wheel, because obviously it's a work truck, so it has to have a plastic steering wheel. I was like, and then I went in the office and said, how much is this thing? It's about 77 grand. So I was like, right, okay. So the work truck version with a plastic steering wheel is still 77 grand.
Yeah.
But I mean, 539 miles is a hell of a long way on a single charge, and I liked it. I thought it was a really nice truck to drive. It's massive, but then aren't they all? But it was kind of a good, honest EV truck. The only thing that it doesn't have that the RST does is the RST has got that fancy rear tailgate, which allows you to basically use the rear seats as additional storage.
Yeah.
Which if you've got a really long item, you can kind of put it
Like a
in
mid gate.
Yeah, mid-gate. I was reaching for the term. The work truck doesn't have that. But apart from that, it's quite a desirable thing, but
But
at a price.
it's not really doing this range with some new innovative technology or steady state batteries or whatever the future is going to be. It's just a massive battery.
That's right. And I think that's the bit that I feel like a lot of these things have to kind of overcome, because it's just, they solve the problem by basically throwing kilowatt hours at it. Was it 200 and I
Five.
think exactly 200 and what is it?
205
205.
we're looking at here.
Yeah,
205
205.
kilowatt battery is you're right. Like the home chargers or here in the apartment complex, it's like 7 kilowatts. Like I get it. You don't have to top it, use the whole battery all the time. You top it off and when you need to, and you've got plenty of range. So it's not any different than anything else until you do the long trip and you want to refill the battery, right? Like for me and my Lightning to drive from here to Vegas, I got to stop halfway in between. I got to pull over at a Walmart with a fast charger for, a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then continue my trip and then charge in Vegas. Here, this thing you can just drive on through. Just go right to where you're going, hit the Vegas trip. It's great. But when you're there, you're going to have to really charge it. And you're going to have to on a fast charger, if it doesn't kick you off the fast charger, maybe there's a time limit and the fast chargers probably cap it at 80 or 90% or really start to slow you down. But even if we can get the hotel to charge it for you, I hope you're there for a couple days.
Yeah,
It's
well,
gonna
this is the
be
thing.
plugged
So
in for 2 days.
we have a fast charger at the office, but we use the level two, same as what you'd have at home, as to recharge after the range test. And I
Right.
think it's basic maths, right? This thing is 200 kilowatt hours. So on a fast charger, you get a slightly different curve where it charges quickly initially and then slows down. On the slow charger, it does. It's more of a kind of linear curve. I won't go into too much of the science of it, but basically, if you think your domestic thing at home does about mine does about 7.4 kilowatts an hour, and this thing's 205. So simple math says it's 30 hours pretty much
Pretty
to
much.
recharge
Yeah, I
it.
mean, if it was depleted to nothing,
If it was
but
depleted, so 30 hours to us to recharge it after we do one of these tests. And when you look at the efficiency of it, so there's a different thing, right? You've got the range, but then the efficiency of it really isn't that great. It's one of the least. It's marginally more efficient than a Cybertruck, more efficient than a Rivian, more efficient than a Lightning. Sorry, Matt, but you're down there with the. No, I'm telling a lie. It's less efficient than the Lightning. Is it less efficient than the Lightning? It is. No, marginally more efficient than the Lightning. Just. But none of these things are very efficient because they're massive, heavy trucks. So
yeah.
you're solving the problem with a massive battery, and then you've got the problem of how do you recharge it. So that range is only really accessible if you're fast charging it, which is usually using somewhere external and it's expensive, or if really what you're doing is topping it up all the time. So, it's still a compromise. And of course, it's still expensive, but I liked it. I mean, leaving aside the plastic steering wheel, which drove me mad, I thought it was a good, honest thing.
Yeah.
And just having that security of going a long, long way. And it's still pretty quick. I mean, we tested it, what, 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds for an 8,500 pound truck. That's still going some.
Yeah, I've seen a few on the street. They look kind of cool, looks kind of interesting. I do like the range because I do have to go down to like San Diego and stuff every once in a while. And now it's getting more like once a month going down there. And I charge when I get down there. I'd like to be able to go there, come back, and then put it on the charger overnight at home.
Yeah.
But I don't get to do that yet. I'm just coming short, a little bit. Part of it is we changed the wheels and tires on it, so I probably, lose another 10% of my range if I go back, which I might do. We're going to do a new set of wheels and just go back to the low rolling resistance, highly efficient tire instead of like, a stickier like Nitto tire. And then I'll get a little bit more of my range back, and it's mostly what I'm talking about is the highway miles, right? So this range test is good. It's 500 and something miles on it. But if you're, like you said, if you're driving to San Diego, you're driving to San Francisco, driving to Vegas, you're probably not going to get that much range because there's no real braking. You're doing 75 miles an hour the whole time, but it's still going to get you there.
Yeah.
Even if you're 50 miles short of this total, you're
And
you
if
need
and if you're
300
towing,
miles to get there, and you can do it.
and the other good thing is if you're towing, you're still going to do, even if you're half that from towing, you're still going 250 miles. Whereas with the Lightning, you're talking into the 130, 140 or something. So
Yeah.
that I think that makes a difference. That even if you're going to use it to towing, you've got sensible towing range as well. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I didn't
thought it
even think
was.
about that. That's an interesting point is especially with this one. This is the work truck. Maybe you are loading it up with a lot of gear
Yeah,
or towing something, even if just towing the small utility trailer, to be able to basically drive this thing all day without having to charge it.
yeah. That's the big plus about it. And maybe if you've got a company and you get a fast charger as part of that, as on like a fleet solution, it makes a lot of sense. So it's interesting. I just feel with all these things that, we need that next technological breakthrough. And I know people are talking about solid state batteries and stuff. I think we need a more efficient battery and a way of charging it, consistently
Yeah.
quicker. So it'll come, but it's taking a bit of time.
I keep hearing grumblings from Nissan saying, we're not done with a GTR. The future of a GTR could be a high performance hybrid with, you're right, the latest battery technology,
Yeah.
some sort of like steady state battery or something is what they want to do. Something highly efficient, smaller, lighter weight that makes
Yeah.
makes sense. So, I mean,
Oh,
it incentivizes them to advance battery technology.
maybe we'll go back to a 3,000 pound M5. We'll see.
We'll see.
See what I did there? I brought the show full circle.
There, it's why you're the best, Alistair.
Yeah. Well, I've got to stave off my substitutes. So
Um, all right, we're gonna wrap things up. What do we got on the docket? You're gonna do your trip soon to
I'm going to
drive a
celebrate my
Corvette?
birthday.
Celebrate your birthday
Yeah.
this weekend?
What do I got on the docket? What do we got coming up? ZR1 is coming up, but I can't remember when we're allowed to talk about it. But we're going to have a go in that before in the not too distant future. We'll maybe talk more about this next week. But we're just launching a great test, a roundup of all the SUVs under 30 grand. Some
Yeah.
proper sensible advice. So that's some good stuff. And yeah, everybody's just really busy running around. So there's some new. Yeah, there's plenty of new stuff coming out. So yeah, maybe we'll talk about the SUVs next week and get back into some real world advice.
And in the EV world, I am curious to hear more about Ionic 9 because
Yeah,
EV9 did so well, and Ionic 9 really caught the attention at the LA Auto Show last year.
Yeah, we talked about Palisade a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? Which the gas version looks like an old Range Rover. The EV9 is a really smart looking car, and I think Hyundai's doing a good job of differentiating their cars from what Kia's doing. So the EV9 is a bit more kind of cartoonish and a bit more youthful.
Yeah,
The Ionic 9 is more like what you imagine Genesis would do, because there is no Genesis 3 row. So yeah, I haven't driven it yet, but that's the EV9 is such a great car that I got high hopes for that.
right. Okay. All right. Next week, have a good weekend. Happy birthday. Have fun.
Thank you very much. Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Yep. Until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.